Over 25 centuries ago, a prince named Siddhartha Gautama sat beneath a Bodhi tree and vowed not to rise until he understood the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. After years of seeking, practicing extreme asceticism, and finally settling into deep meditation, he awakened. He became the Buddha, the awakened one. What he discovered that night was not a religious doctrine, but a profound understanding of the human condition. He saw that suffering is universal, but it is not inevitable. He understood that peace is not something we must earn or achieve, but rather something we uncover when we remove the layers of delusion, craving, and aversion that obscure our true nature. The Buddha's teachings are not about worship or blind faith. They are about understanding, practice, and direct experience. They are about waking up from the dream of separation, fear, and endless wanting, and recognizing the peace that has always been available to us. In a world that moves faster every day, where anxiety and stress have become the norm, the Buddha's wisdom is more relevant than ever. His teachings offer a practical path to inner peace, a path that does not require you to retreat to a monastery or renounce the world, but rather to engage with life more skillfully, more mindfully, and more compassionately. These 10 lessons draw from the core of Buddhist philosophy, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the practice of mindfulness, and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. Each lesson builds upon the last, creating a framework for living that leads naturally to peace, clarity, and genuine happiness. You do not need to be a Buddhist to benefit from these teachings. You do not need to adopt any particular belief system. You simply need to be willing to look honestly at your own mind, to question your habitual patterns, and to practice with sincerity and patience. The path to peace is not a distant destination. It is here, in this moment, waiting for you to recognize it. Let us walk this path together. Lesson 1: Understand the nature of suffering, dukkha. The Buddha's first noble truth is often translated as, life is suffering, but this translation misses the nuance of the original Pali word dukkha. Dukkha encompasses not just overt suffering, but also dissatisfaction, unease, stress, and the pervasive sense that something is not quite right. Even in moments of pleasure, there is dukkha, because pleasure is impermanent, and we know it will end. Even when we have what we want, there is dukkha, because we fear losing it. Even when things are going well, there is dukkha, because we are never fully satisfied for long. This is not pessimism. This is clear seeing. The Buddha was not saying life is miserable and hopeless. He was pointing to a fundamental characteristic of human existence. As long as we cling to the illusion that lasting happiness can be found in external circumstances, we will suffer. Think about your own life. How much of your stress comes from wanting things to be different than they are? How much of your anxiety comes from fearing the future or regretting the past? How much of your dissatisfaction comes from comparing yourself to others or chasing the next achievement, purchase, or experience? This is dukkha. It is the suffering that comes from living out of alignment with reality. It is the friction that arises when we resist what is and grasp at what we want. But here is the liberating truth: the Buddha did not stop at identifying the problem. He taught that suffering has a cause, and because it has a cause, it can be ended. Suffering is not an inherent, unchangeable feature of existence. It is something we create through our relationship with our experience. Understanding dukkha is the first step toward freedom. It requires you to look honestly at your life and recognize where you are suffering. Not to wallow in it, not to identify with it, but to see it clearly for what it is. Notice the ways you create suffering through resistance. When something unpleasant happens, do you immediately push it away, deny it, or become angry about it? This resistance is dukkha. The unpleasant event itself may be unavoidable, but the suffering you add through resistance is optional. Notice the ways you create suffering through attachment. When something pleasant happens, do you cling to it, trying to make it last forever? Do you become anxious about losing it? This clinging is dukkha. The pleasant experience itself is not the problem, the suffering comes from your desperate attempt to hold on to it. Notice the ways you create suffering through delusion. Do you believe that your happiness depends on external conditions, getting the job, finding the relationship, achieving the goal? This belief is dukkha. It keeps you perpetually chasing something outside yourself, never finding lasting peace. The Buddha taught that there are three types of dukkha: the suffering of painful experiences, the suffering of change, even pleasant experiences end, and the suffering of conditioned existence, the underlying unsatisfactoriness of trying to find permanent happiness in an impermanent world. Once you see this clearly, once you recognize that much of your suffering is self-created, you can begin to release it. You can stop adding fuel to the fire. You can start responding to life with wisdom instead of reactive patterns. Understanding dukkha is not about becoming depressed or cynical. It is about becoming realistic. It is about seeing through the illusions that keep you trapped in cycles of craving and aversion. It is about recognizing that peace is not found by getting everything you want, but by changing your relationship with wanting itself. This understanding is compassionate. When you see that everyone is struggling with dukkha in their own way, you become less judgmental, less reactive, less caught up in drama. You recognize that the person who hurt you is also suffering. That the difficult situation you are facing is part of the universal human experience. The Buddha did not teach you to accept suffering as inevitable and give up. He taught you to understand it so deeply that you can transcend it. And that understanding begins here, with the recognition that suffering exists, that it is pervasive, but that it is not the final word. There is a way out. And it begins with seeing clearly. Lesson 2, recognize the root of suffering, tanha. The Buddha's second noble truth identifies the cause of suffering, tanha, which is often translated as craving, thirst, or attachment. Tanha is the relentless drive to grasp at pleasure, to push away pain, and to cling to the illusion of a permanent, separate self. At the root of all suffering is this fundamental misunderstanding: we believe that happiness comes from getting what we want and avoiding what we do not want. We spend our entire lives in pursuit of pleasant experiences and in avoidance of unpleasant ones. And yet, no matter how much we accumulate, no matter how many desires we fulfill, we are never satisfied for long. This is because the nature of desire is insatiable. When you fulfill one desire, another arises. When you acquire what you wanted, you begin to fear losing it. When you achieve one goal, you set another. The cycle never ends. Tanha manifests in three primary ways: craving for sensory pleasure, craving for existence, wanting to be someone, to achieve something, to be recognized, and craving for non-existence, wanting to escape, to avoid, to disappear from difficult situations. Think about how much of your mental energy is consumed by these cravings. You want the new phone, the better job, the perfect relationship. You want to be admired, respected, loved. You want to avoid discomfort, criticism, failure. You are constantly reaching for what you do not have and running from what you do not want. This constant state of wanting creates a baseline of dissatisfaction. Even when you get what you want, the satisfaction is temporary. The mind immediately moves on to the next desire. You are never at peace because you are always in a state of lack, always chasing the next thing that you believe will finally make you happy. The Buddha was not saying that all desire is bad or that you should become a passive, emotionless being. He was pointing to the difference between healthy preferences and unhealthy attachments. You can have goals, enjoy pleasures, and work toward things without being enslaved by craving. The key distinction is attachment. When you are attached, your happiness depends on the outcome. When you do not get what you want, you suffer. When you get what you want, you fear losing it. Your peace is constantly at the mercy of external circumstances. But when you act from a place of non-attachment, you can pursue goals and enjoy experiences without clinging to them. You can work hard without being devastated by failure. You can enjoy success without being consumed by the need for more. You can love deeply without suffocating the relationship with possessiveness. This is the freedom the Buddha pointed to, freedom from the tyranny of craving. To recognize tanha in your own life, you must become aware of your patterns. Notice when you are operating from a place of, I want, or, I don't want. Notice the restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the feeling that something is missing. Notice how your mind is constantly scanning for the next pleasure or the next problem to avoid. Also notice the subtler forms of craving, the need to be right, to be in control, to have things go your way. The craving for approval, for validation, for security. These are all forms of tanha, and they all create suffering. The practice is not to suppress these cravings or to judge yourself for having them. The practice is simply to see them clearly, to recognize them as they arise, and to understand that they are the source of your unease. When you see a desire arise, pause and ask yourself, what am I really seeking? Is it the thing itself, or is it the feeling I believe the thing will give me? Often, you will discover that you are not actually craving the object or experience, you are craving the sense of completeness, safety, or worthiness you believe it will bring. And here is the radical insight, that sense of completeness is already within you. It does not come from external circumstances. It is obscured by craving, but it is always there, waiting to be uncovered. The Buddha taught that the end of craving is the end of suffering. This does not mean you become indifferent or apathetic. It means you stop living in a constant state of lack. You stop believing that happiness is something you need to acquire from outside yourself. You start recognizing that peace is your natural state when you are not caught up in the endless cycle of wanting. This is a profound shift. It is not easy, and it does not happen overnight. But every time you recognize craving for what it is, every time you pause and choose not to be swept away by it, you weaken its hold on you. You begin to taste freedom. And once you taste it, you cannot forget it. You will keep coming back to this practice, again and again, until one day you realize that the craving has loosened its grip, and peace has become your home. Lesson 3, know that suffering can end, Nirodha. The third noble truth is perhaps the most hopeful teaching in all of Buddhism, suffering can end. This is not a distant possibility reserved for enlightened masters. It is available to you, here and now, in this very life. The Buddha called this state nibbana, or nirvana in Sanskrit, which literally means, blowing out, or extinguishing, the extinguishing of the fires of craving, aversion, and delusion. It is not a place you go after death. It is a state of being you can touch in moments of deep presence, clarity, and letting go. Nibbana is often misunderstood as annihilation or nothingness, but this is a misinterpretation. It is not the end of existence, it is the end of suffering. It is the peace that remains when you stop fighting with reality, when you stop clinging to what you want and resisting what is. You have likely experienced glimpses of this already, though you may not have recognized them. Moments when you were so fully present that all your worries disappeared. Moments when you felt completely at peace, not because everything was perfect, but because you had let go of the need for perfection. Moments when you experienced pure contentment, not from getting what you wanted, but from simply being. These are tastes of nibbana. They show you that peace is not something you need to create or acquire. It is already here, beneath the layers of craving, aversion, and mental noise. The Buddha taught that the end of suffering comes not from changing external circumstances, but from transforming your relationship with them. It comes from seeing through the illusions that create suffering, the illusion that you are a separate, permanent self, the illusion that happiness depends on external conditions, the illusion that clinging and aversion will protect you. When these illusions dissolve, what remains is peace. Not a passive, dull peace, but a vibrant, alive, deeply satisfying peace. A peace that is not disturbed by the ups and downs of life, because it does not depend on circumstances. This teaching is radical because it places the key to your happiness in your own hands. You are not at the mercy of fate, of other people, or of external conditions. You have the power to end your suffering by changing the way you relate to your experience. This does not mean you will never feel pain. Pain is part of life, physical pain, emotional pain, the pain of loss and change. But suffering is optional. Suffering is what you add to pain through resistance, through rumination, through the stories you tell yourself about what the pain means. When you stop adding suffering to pain, you discover that you can handle far more than you thought. You can experience sadness without being destroyed by it. You can face difficulty without collapsing into despair. You can feel fear without being paralyzed by it. The end of suffering also does not mean the end of caring or the end of emotions. It means the end of being enslaved by them. You can still feel deeply, love deeply, care deeply, but you are no longer at the mercy of every passing emotion. You have found a ground of stability beneath the waves. To touch this peace, you do not need to become perfect. You do not need to eliminate all desires or never feel anger again. You simply need to see clearly, let go a little more, and return to the present moment over and over again. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so practical. It is not about belief or faith. It is about practice and direct experience. Try it and see for yourself. When you let go of craving, even for a moment, do you not feel lighter? When you accept what is, instead of fighting it, do you not feel more peaceful? When you release your attachment to a particular outcome, do you not feel freer? These experiences confirm the truth of the teaching. They show you that the end of suffering is not a fairy tale. It is a real possibility, available to you in every moment. The more you practice, the more you cultivate mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion, the more frequently you will touch this peace. And eventually, it becomes not just a fleeting experience, but your baseline state. This is the promise of the Buddha's path. Not that life will become easy or free from challenges, but that you will become free from suffering. You will discover an unshakable peace that does not depend on circumstances, a joy that does not depend on getting what you want, and a love that does not depend on conditions. This is your birthright. This is your true nature. And it is waiting for you to recognize it. Lesson 4, Follow the Path to Freedom, the Noble Eightfold Path. The fourth noble truth provides the roadmap, the Noble Eightfold Path. This is not a linear, step-by-step process, but rather 8 interconnected practices that support and strengthen each other. Together, they form a complete guide for living with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. The 8 aspects of the path are traditionally grouped into 3 categories: wisdom, right view and right intention, ethical conduct, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, and mental discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right view means seeing reality as it truly is, not through the filters of your conditioning, biases, or delusions. It means understanding the 4 noble truths, recognizing impermanence, and seeing the interconnectedness of all things. Right view is the foundation of the path because how you see determines how you act. Right intention means cultivating wholesome motivations, the intention of renunciation, letting go of craving, the intention of goodwill, wishing well for all beings, and the intention of harmlessness, not wanting to cause suffering. Your intentions shape your actions, so purifying your intentions is essential. Right speech means speaking truthfully, kindly, and beneficially. It means avoiding lies, harsh words, gossip, and idle chatter that creates harm or confusion. Speech is powerful, it can heal or wound, unite or divide. Right speech is about using words to create understanding and reduce suffering. Right action means acting in ways that do not cause harm to yourself or others. The Buddha offered 5 basic ethical precepts: not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not taking intoxicants that cloud the mind. These are not commandments, but guidelines for living in a way that supports peace and clarity. Right livelihood means earning a living in a way that does not cause harm. It means avoiding professions that involve killing, stealing, sexual exploitation, dishonesty, or selling harmful substances. Your work takes up a significant portion of your life, and if it conflicts with your values, it will create inner turmoil. Right effort means cultivating wholesome mental states and abandoning unwholesome ones. It involves preventing negative states from arising, letting go of negative states that have arisen, cultivating positive states, and maintaining positive states that have arisen. This is not about forcing or suppressing, it is about wise discernment and gentle persistence. Right mindfulness means maintaining continuous awareness of your body, feelings, mind, and mental objects. It is the practice of being fully present with your experience, observing it without judgment or reactivity. Mindfulness is the key that unlocks the entire path, because without awareness, you cannot see clearly or choose wisely. Right concentration means developing the ability to focus the mind deeply and steadily. This is cultivated through meditation practices that calm the mind and lead to states of profound peace and clarity. Concentration gives you the stability and strength to see deeply into the nature of reality. These 8 practices are not separate compartments of your life. They are interwoven threads that, when practiced together, create a fabric of wisdom, compassion, and peace. You do not need to perfect all 8 before you begin to benefit. Start where you are. Choose one aspect to focus on this week. Perhaps you commit to speaking more kindly, right speech, or to noticing when you are lost in thought instead of present, right mindfulness, or to examining your motivations before you act, right intention. As you practice one aspect, you will naturally strengthen the others. Right speech supports right action. Right mindfulness supports right view. Right effort supports right concentration. They all work together, creating momentum toward liberation. The Eightfold Path is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is about consistently moving toward greater awareness, greater kindness, greater wisdom. Some days you will succeed, some days you will fail. What matters is that you keep returning to the path, again and again, with patience and self-compassion. The Buddha compared the path to tuning a stringed instrument. If the strings are too tight, they will break. If they are too loose, they will not make music. The path requires balance, effort without strain, discipline without rigidity, persistence without self-punishment. Walk the path with sincerity, but also with lightness. Do not turn it into another source of stress or self-judgment. The path itself is the destination. Each step you take toward greater awareness and compassion is itself the goal. This is the way to freedom. Not through grand spiritual experiences or miraculous transformations, but through the simple, everyday practice of living with wisdom, integrity, and presence. The path is here. The question is, will you walk it? Lesson 5, Practice Mindfulness, Sati. Mindfulness, sati in Pali, is the heart of the Buddha's teaching. It is the practice of maintaining moment-to-moment awareness of your experience without judgment, resistance, or attachment. It is the art of being fully present with what is, exactly as it is. Most people spend the majority of their lives lost in thought, dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, running automatic programs of reaction and habit. They are physically present but mentally absent. They eat without tasting, walk without feeling, and live without truly experiencing life. Mindfulness is the antidote to this unconsciousness. It is the practice of waking up to your life, of inhabiting your body and your experience fully, of meeting each moment with fresh awareness. The Buddha taught 4 foundations of mindfulness: mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, mindfulness of the mind, your mental states and moods, and mindfulness of mental objects, thoughts, perceptions, and patterns. Mindfulness of the body begins with the simple practice of noticing your breath. The breath is always with you, always in the present moment. When you bring your attention to the sensation of breathing, the rise and fall of your chest, the coolness of air entering your nostrils, the gentle pause between breaths, you anchor yourself in the now. You can also practice mindfulness of bodily sensations, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the texture of fabric on your skin, the tension in your shoulders, the temperature of the air. By bringing awareness to these sensations, you inhabit your body more fully and become less lost in thought. Mindfulness of feelings means noticing the tone of your experience, whether what you are experiencing is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is important because your reactions are often driven by these feeling tones. When something is pleasant, you automatically crave more of it. When something is unpleasant, you automatically push it away. By becoming aware of these feeling tones before you react, you create space to respond more wisely. Mindfulness of the mind means observing your mental states without identifying with them. You notice when your mind is calm or agitated, focused or scattered, joyful or sad. Instead of thinking, "I am angry," you observe anger is present. This subtle shift creates distance between you and your mental states, reminding you that you are not your emotions, you are the awareness that observes them. Mindfulness of mental objects means noticing your thoughts, beliefs, and mental patterns. You observe thoughts arising and passing without getting caught up in them. You notice recurring patterns, the tendency to catastrophize, to judge, to compare. By seeing these patterns clearly, you weaken their automatic power over you. The practice of mindfulness is simple, but not easy. Your mind will wander constantly, this is normal. The practice is not to prevent wandering, but to notice when you have wandered and gently bring your attention back to the present. Again and again and again. Every time you notice that you have been lost in thought and return to the present moment, you are strengthening your mindfulness. You are training your mind to be where you are, instead of somewhere else. Mindfulness can be practiced formally through meditation, and it can also be practiced informally throughout your day. You can practice mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful listening, mindful working. Any activity can become a mindfulness practice when you bring your full attention to it. The benefits of mindfulness are profound. It reduces stress and anxiety because you are no longer lost in worries about the future or regrets about the past. It increases joy because you are actually present to experience the good moments in your life. It improves relationships because you are truly listening instead of waiting for your turn to talk. It enhances performance because you are fully engaged instead of distracted. Most importantly, mindfulness reveals the truth of your experience. When you observe your mind closely, you see that thoughts are just thoughts, they arise and pass like clouds in the sky. You see that emotions are just energy moving through your body, they are not permanent, and they do not define you. You see that the self you have been defending and protecting is actually a fluid, ever-changing process, not a fixed entity. This seeing is liberating. When you realize that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even your body, but rather the awareness that witnesses all of these, you discover a profound freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of every passing mental state. You have found a ground of peace that is always available, always stable, always here. The Buddha said, mindfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The mindful do not die, the heedless are already dead. This is not a metaphor. To live unconsciously, lost in thought and habit, is to be asleep to your life. To live mindfully is to truly live, to be awake, to experience the richness and fullness of each moment. Begin now. Take a breath and notice it. Feel your body. Observe your thoughts. Be here, fully, completely, without judgment. This is mindfulness. This is the path. Lesson 6, Cultivate loving kindness, metta. The Buddha taught that true peace is not found in isolation, but in connection. Not in indifference, but in love. The practice of metta, or loving kindness, is the cultivation of an unconditional, boundless goodwill toward all beings, including yourself. Metta is not sentimental affection or emotional attachment. It is a deep, genuine wish for the happiness and well-being of all beings. It is the recognition that just as you wish to be happy and free from suffering, so does every other being. And this recognition naturally gives rise to compassion, empathy, and kindness. The practice begins with yourself. This may seem selfish, but it is actually essential. If you do not have genuine kindness toward yourself, you cannot truly offer it to others. Your kindness will be conditional, performative, or dependent on how others respond to you. The traditional metta practice involves silently repeating phrases such as, "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease." You say these words while genuinely wishing yourself well, not as an obligation, but as an act of self-compassion. Many people struggle with this practice because they have been conditioned to believe that self-love is selfish or that they do not deserve kindness. But the Buddha taught that hatred never ceases by hatred, only by love does hatred cease. And this includes the hatred or harshness you may direct toward yourself. Once you have established a sense of kindness toward yourself, you gradually extend it outward. You bring to mind someone you love and offer them the same wishes. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Then you extend it to a neutral person, someone you neither like nor dislike. Perhaps a cashier you see regularly or a neighbor you barely know. You wish them well with the same sincerity. Next, and this is where the practice becomes truly transformative, you extend loving kindness to someone you find difficult. Someone who has hurt you, someone you are in conflict with, someone who triggers you. This is not easy, but it is powerful. You are not condoning their actions or pretending everything is fine. You are simply recognizing their humanity and their own desire to be free from suffering. Finally, you extend loving kindness to all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be safe. May all beings live with ease. This practice may seem artificial at first. You may not feel anything when you say the words. That is okay. You are planting seeds. With repetition and sincerity, those seeds will grow. You will begin to notice shifts in how you relate to yourself and others. Metta softens the heart. It dissolves the barriers of judgment, resentment, and separation. It reminds you that everyone, regardless of their actions or circumstances, shares the same fundamental desire, to be happy and free from suffering. When you cultivate metta, you also cultivate its close companions, compassion, the wish for others to be free from suffering, empathetic joy, the ability to rejoice in others' happiness, and equanimity, the ability to remain balanced in the face of life's ups and downs. These four qualities, loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity, are called the Brahmaviharas, or divine abodes. They are the emotional qualities of an awakened heart, and they are available to you through practice. Loving kindness also has immediate practical benefits. It reduces anger and resentment. It improves relationships. It increases your sense of connection and reduces loneliness. It makes you more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. And it creates a positive feedback loop. The more kindness you offer, the more kindness you experience in return. But the deepest gift of metta is that it transforms your inner world. When you genuinely wish yourself and others well, you cannot hold on to bitterness. You cannot remain trapped in cycles of blame and victimhood. You open yourself to the possibility of healing, reconciliation, and peace. The Buddha taught that you should never stop seeking to perfect your skill in metta, just as a mother would risk her life to protect her child, her only child. This is the quality of love the Buddha encouraged, boundless, unconditional, fierce in its gentleness. Practice metta every day, even if only for 5 minutes. Begin with yourself. Extend it to those you love, to those you are neutral toward, to those you find difficult, and to all beings everywhere. Let it become a background hum in your consciousness, a lens through which you see the world. And watch as your heart opens, your relationships transform, and your capacity for peace deepens beyond measure. Lesson 7. Embrace impermanence, anicca. Everything changes. Nothing lasts. This is anicca, the teaching of impermanence, and it is one of the 3 fundamental characteristics of existence in Buddhism, along with suffering and non-self. Impermanence is not just a philosophical concept. It is a direct observation of reality. Your body is changing every moment, cells dying, new ones being born. Your thoughts and emotions arise and pass. The people in your life come and go. The seasons turn. Civilizations rise and fall. Even mountains erode. Nothing remains the same. And yet, you spend much of your life pretending this is not true. You cling to people, possessions, experiences, and identities as if they were permanent. You try to freeze moments in time, to hold on to pleasure, to avoid change. And this resistance to impermanence is a primary source of suffering. The Buddha taught that when you deeply understand and accept impermanence, you free yourself from much of your suffering. You stop clinging so tightly. You stop living in fear of loss. You start appreciating what is here while it is here. Think about your attachment to material possessions. You work hard to acquire things, and then you worry about losing them or damaging them. But everything you own will eventually break, decay, or be lost. Your car will rust. Your clothes will wear out. Your house will crumble. Knowing this, can you enjoy what you have without clinging to it? Think about your relationships. The people you love will change. They will age, grow, perhaps move away. Some will die before you will die before others. This is not morbid, it is reality. And when you accept this reality, you stop taking people for granted. You cherish the time you have with them. You love more fully because you know it will not last forever. Think about your body. It is constantly changing, constantly aging. One day it will die. When you accept this, you stop obsessing over every wrinkle, every ache, every sign of decline. You take care of your body with gratitude, but you do not cling to the illusion that it will remain young and healthy forever. Think about your emotions. When you are suffering, it feels like it will last forever. But it will not. When you are joyful, you fear the joy will end. And it will. Everything is in flux. No emotion, no experience, no state of being is permanent. Understanding impermanence does not make you pessimistic or depressed. It makes you present. It makes you grateful. It makes you wise. There is a story in Buddhist tradition about a woman named Kisa Gautami who lost her young son. Overwhelmed with grief, she carried his body from house to house, begging for medicine to bring him back to life. Eventually, someone directed her to the Buddha. The Buddha told her he could help, but she would need to bring him a mustard seed from a household that had never experienced death. Kisa Gautami went from door to door, but at every house, she found that someone had died, a parent, a child, a spouse. She could not find a single household untouched by loss. Finally, she understood. Death is universal. Impermanence is the nature of life. Her grief was not unique, it was part of the human condition. And in that understanding, she found peace. Not because the pain disappeared, but because she stopped resisting the truth of impermanence. The practice is to bring awareness to impermanence in your daily life. Notice the changing seasons. Notice your breath coming and going. Notice thoughts arising and passing. Notice how your mood shifts throughout the day. Notice how a delicious meal is enjoyed and then is gone. Say to yourself, this too shall pass. Say it when you are suffering, to remind yourself that the pain is temporary. Say it when you are joyful, not to diminish the joy, but to fully appreciate it before it fades. Impermanence is not something to fear. It is the very condition that makes life precious. If nothing ever changed, there would be no growth, no transformation, no possibility. Life would be static, frozen, dead. It is precisely because things change that new opportunities arise, that healing is possible, that you can become wiser, kinder, freer. The Buddha also taught that clinging to the illusion of permanence is what creates the illusion of a permanent self. You believe you are a fixed entity, a solid me that exists independently and unchangingly. But when you look closely, you see that you too are a process, a flow, a constantly changing collection of physical and mental phenomena. This does not mean you do not exist. It means you exist differently than you thought. Not as a solid, separate self, but as a dynamic, interconnected process. And when you see this clearly, the fear of death loses some of its power, because you realize that what you thought you were was never truly solid or permanent in the first place. Embrace impermanence. Do not resist the flow of life. Do not cling to what is already gone or fear the future that has not yet arrived. Be here now, fully alive to this fleeting, precious, ever-changing moment. When you make peace with impermanence, you make peace with life itself. And in that peace, you discover a freedom that nothing can take away. Lesson 8, Understand Non-Self, Anatta. Perhaps the most radical and liberating teaching of the Buddha is Anatta, the doctrine of non-self. This teaching directly challenges one of your most deeply held beliefs, that you are a permanent, independent, unchanging self or soul. The Buddha taught that there is no such thing as a fixed, permanent self. What you call I, or me, is actually a constantly changing collection of physical and mental processes, the body, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, working together to create the illusion of a solid, separate entity. This is not a philosophical abstraction. It is something you can observe directly in your own experience. When you look for this self, where is it? Is it your body? But your body is constantly changing, cells are replaced, your physical form ages, and one day this body will die. Is it your thoughts? But thoughts arise and pass continuously, which thought is the real you? Is it your emotions? But emotions are fleeting and constantly shifting. Is it your consciousness? But even consciousness changes states, waking, dreaming, sleeping. The more closely you examine your experience, the more you realize that there is no fixed, unchanging self to be found. There is experience happening, but no permanent experiencer. There is thinking, but no permanent thinker. There is a flow of life, but no solid entity at the center of it. This teaching can be unsettling at first. You might think, if there is no self, then who am I? Does this mean I don't exist? But the Buddha was not teaching that you do not exist. He was teaching that you do not exist in the way you think you do. You exist as a process, not as a thing. You exist as a flow, not as a fixed point. Understanding non-self is profoundly liberating because most of your suffering comes from defending, protecting, and promoting this illusion of a separate self. You suffer when your self-image is threatened. You suffer when you do not get the recognition you think you deserve. You suffer when you compare yourself to others. You suffer when you cling to a particular identity that no longer serves you. Think about all the energy you expend maintaining your sense of self. Defending your opinions. Protecting your reputation. Trying to prove your worth. Avoiding situations that might expose your vulnerabilities. All of this is exhausting, and all of it is based on the illusion that there is a permanent, separate self that needs defending. But when you see through this illusion, when you recognize that the self is empty, fluid, and constructed, you experience immense freedom. You no longer take everything personally. You no longer feel the need to defend yourself constantly. You can receive criticism without feeling destroyed. You can experience failure without identifying as a failure. You can let go of old identities that no longer serve you. The teaching of non-self also reveals the truth of interconnection. If there is no separate, independent self, then you are not separate from the rest of existence. You are intimately connected to everything and everyone. Your breath depends on trees. Your body depends on food, water, and the work of countless beings. Your thoughts are shaped by language, culture, and the people you have encountered. Your very existence is the result of infinite causes and conditions coming together. You are not an isolated island. You are a wave in the ocean of existence, distinct in appearance, but not separate from the ocean itself. This understanding naturally gives rise to compassion. When you see that there is no fundamental boundary between self and other, harming another is like harming yourself. Helping another is like helping yourself. The artificial distinction between me and them begins to dissolve. The practice of investigating non-self begins with mindfulness. As you observe your experience, notice the constant flow and change. Notice how thoughts arise without your conscious control. Notice how emotions come and go. Notice how even your sense of I is not constant. It is different when you are alone versus with others, when you are confident versus insecure, when you are tired versus energized. Ask yourself, who am I, really? Do not accept easy answers. Keep looking. Keep questioning. The deeper you look, the less solid the self appears, until eventually you see that it is like a mirage. It seems real from a distance, but when you get close, there is nothing solid there. This does not mean you become a different person or lose your personality. It means you hold your personality more lightly. You recognize that the roles you play, parent, professional, friend, citizen, are just roles, not your ultimate identity. You can play them skillfully without being imprisoned by them. Understanding non-self also frees you from existential anxiety. Much of your fear and worry comes from the belief that this separate self must be protected at all costs. But when you see that this self is a mental construct, not an ultimate reality, the fear loses its grip. What is there to protect if there is no solid self to begin with? This teaching is not meant to be grasped intellectually. It must be seen directly through practice and contemplation. Meditation is the laboratory where you can observe the arising and passing of all phenomena, including the sense of self, and see for yourself that there is no permanent entity at the center. The Buddha taught that clinging to the idea of self is like grabbing a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. When you let go of the illusion of self, you put down the burning coal. You free yourself from the constant struggle to maintain, defend, and promote something that was never solid in the first place. This is not nihilism. This is liberation. And it is available to you when you are ready to see beyond the stories your mind tells and recognize the flowing, interconnected, empty nature of all things, including yourself. Lesson 9, Practice Meditation, Bhavana. Meditation, Bhavana in Pali, meaning cultivation or development, is the practical heart of Buddhist practice. It is the method through which you directly experience the truths the Buddha taught. It is the laboratory where you observe your mind, understand suffering, and cultivate wisdom and compassion. There are many forms of Buddhist meditation, but they generally fall into two main categories: samatha, calm abiding or concentration meditation, and vipassana, insight meditation. Samatha meditation develops concentration, stability, and tranquility. It involves focusing your attention on a single object, most commonly the breath, and returning to that object whenever the mind wanders. Through sustained practice, the mind becomes calm, unified, and capable of deep concentration. This concentrated mind is then a powerful tool for insight practice. To practice samatha, find a quiet place and sit comfortably with your back straight. Close your eyes or lower your gaze. Bring your attention to the sensation of breathing. You might focus on the feeling of air entering and leaving your nostrils, or the rise and fall of your abdomen. Do not try to control the breath, simply observe it as it is. Your mind will wander, this is guaranteed. You will think about the past, plan the future, worry about problems, replay conversations. This is not failure, this is just what minds do. The practice is to notice when you have wandered and gently, without judgment, bring your attention back to the breath. Again and again and again. Each time you notice and return, you are strengthening your concentration and your awareness. You are training your mind to be where you choose, rather than being pulled around by every passing thought. With consistent practice, the mind begins to settle. Thoughts become less frequent and less compelling. A sense of peace and well-being arises. This is not the ultimate goal, but it is a valuable foundation for deeper work. Vipassana meditation develops insight into the true nature of reality. It involves observing the arising and passing of all phenomena, sensations, thoughts, emotions, with clear, non-reactive awareness. Through this observation, you directly see the three characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. To practice vipassana, you can begin with the same breath awareness as samatha, but with a different emphasis. Instead of trying to develop deep concentration on a single object, you are opening your awareness to whatever arises in your experience. You notice sensations in the body, sounds, thoughts, emotions, all coming and going, arising and passing. The key is to observe without getting involved. When a sensation arises, you note it, tingling, pressure, heat, and watch it change. When a thought arises, you note it, planning, remembering, judging, and watch it pass. When an emotion arises, you note it, frustration, joy, sadness, and observe its energy moving through you. You are not trying to change anything or make anything happen. You are simply witnessing the flow of experience with clear, equanimous awareness. And through this witnessing, profound insights naturally arise. You see directly that everything is impermanent. Not as a concept, but as a lived reality. You watch sensations arise and vanish. You watch thoughts bubble up and dissolve. You watch emotions peak and fade. Nothing stays. Everything flows. You see directly that clinging to what is pleasant and resisting what is unpleasant creates suffering. You watch yourself reach for a pleasant sensation and feel the tension of desire. You watch yourself push away an unpleasant sensation and feel the tension of aversion. You see that peace comes from neither grasping nor resisting, but from equanimous observation. You see directly that there is no solid self. You search for the I that is supposedly observing, and you cannot find it. There is just awareness, witnessing phenomena arising and passing. No separate observer, no permanent entity, just this flow of experience. These insights are not philosophical conclusions. They are direct perceptions that arise from looking deeply at your own experience. And once you see these truths clearly, they transform how you relate to life. Meditation is not about achieving special states or having mystical experiences, though these may arise. It is about seeing clearly. It is about understanding the nature of your mind and the nature of reality. And this understanding is what liberates you from suffering. Start with short sessions, even 5 or 10 minutes a day. Consistency is more important than duration. Sit every day if possible, at the same time and place. This builds the habit and creates momentum. Be patient with yourself. Your mind will resist. It will offer every excuse not to practice. It will be restless, distracted, bored. This is normal. Do not judge yourself. Simply keep returning to the practice, day after day, with gentle perseverance. Over time, meditation will begin to change you. Not in dramatic, obvious ways necessarily, but in subtle shifts. You will notice you are less reactive. Less caught up in thoughts. More present. More compassionate. More at peace. Meditation is also not separate from your daily life. The awareness you cultivate on the cushion can be brought into every moment. Walking, eating, working, speaking, all can become meditation when you bring mindful presence to them. The Buddha spent years developing and refining meditation practices. He tested them on himself, saw their results, and taught them to others. These practices have been passed down through 2,500 years of unbroken lineage. They work. But they require commitment, patience, and sincerity. Find a practice that resonates with you. Commit to it. Make it non-negotiable. And trust that even when it feels like nothing is happening, the practice is working beneath the surface, transforming your mind and opening you to the peace that has always been here. Lesson 10, Live with compassion and wisdom, karuna and prajna. The final lesson brings together everything you have learned, to live with both compassion, karuna, and wisdom, prajna. These two qualities are like the two wings of a bird, both are necessary for the flight of liberation. Compassion is the heartfelt response to suffering. It is the wish for all beings to be free from pain, and the willingness to act to alleviate suffering wherever you encounter it. Compassion arises naturally when you see clearly that all beings, like you, want to be happy and free from suffering, and that all beings, like you, struggle and experience pain. The Buddha taught that compassion should be boundless and unconditional. It should extend not just to those you love, not just to those who are kind to you, but to all beings, even those who have harmed you, even those you find difficult, even those who seem to be causing harm themselves. This does not mean you tolerate abuse or enable harmful behavior. Compassion includes discernment. Sometimes the most compassionate response is to set a firm boundary, to say no, to protect yourself or others from harm. But even when you set boundaries, you can do so with the intention of reducing suffering rather than punishing or seeking revenge. Compassion also extends to yourself. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. If you exhaust yourself trying to help others while neglecting your own well-being, you will burn out. Self-compassion is not selfish, it is the foundation that allows you to show up fully for others. Practice small acts of compassion every day. Listen deeply to someone who is struggling. Offer help without expecting anything in return. Speak kindly to someone who is difficult. Forgive someone who has hurt you. Volunteer your time. Donate to a cause you believe in. Or simply hold someone in your heart with the genuine wish that they be free from suffering. Wisdom is the clear seeing of reality as it is, without the distortions of craving, aversion, and delusion. It is the deep understanding of impermanence, suffering, non-self, and interdependence. It is the discernment that allows you to distinguish between what leads to suffering and what leads to freedom. Wisdom is not intellectual knowledge. You can read 1,000 books about Buddhism and still lack wisdom. Wisdom comes from direct experience, from looking deeply into your own mind and seeing the truth for yourself. It comes from meditation, contemplation, and mindful living. The Buddha emphasized that wisdom and compassion must always go together. Compassion without wisdom can be misguided, enabling harmful behavior or exhausting yourself without creating real change. Wisdom without compassion can be cold, detached, and self-centered. When wisdom and compassion are united, you act with both clarity and love. You see suffering clearly and understand its causes, and you respond with skillful action that truly helps. You do not get lost in sentimental emotion, but neither do you become indifferent. You maintain equanimity while fully engaging with the world. This union of wisdom and compassion is the hallmark of the Bodhisattva, the being who dedicates their life to the liberation of all beings. You do not need to be a monk or a saint to embody this ideal. You can practice it in your everyday life, in your relationships, in your work, in every interaction. Ask yourself regularly, how can I respond to this situation with both wisdom and compassion? What action would reduce suffering and move toward greater understanding? Living with compassion and wisdom also means living ethically. The Buddha's ethical guidelines are not arbitrary rules, but practical guidelines for reducing suffering and cultivating peace. When you act ethically, when you refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxication, you create less harm in the world and less turmoil in your own mind. Ethical living is also about your relationship with the planet and all its inhabitants. The Buddha taught interconnection, that everything is related to everything else. Your actions have consequences that ripple outward. When you live with awareness of this interconnection, you naturally become more responsible, more caring, more conscious of the impact of your choices. The ultimate expression of compassion and wisdom is living in a way that benefits all beings, not just yourself. It is recognizing that your liberation and the liberation of all beings are not separate. When you work to free yourself from suffering, you become more capable of helping others. When you work to help others, you deepen your own understanding and freedom. This is the Bodhisattva path, the path of awakening not for your own sake alone, but for the sake of all beings. It is the recognition that true happiness is found not in isolation, but in connection, service, and love. You do not need to become a different person to live this way. You simply need to cultivate what is already within you, the natural wisdom and compassion that arise when you see clearly and open your heart.